Okay, now after all this prep work, we are finally going to actually do a fluid responsive grid design here. We're going to implement the one that we've already designed. So the first thing I want to do is, I don't have a heading level 1 in this page, and it is bothering me. So I'm just going to change that to heading level 1. And you'll notice that there's not much styling on this sheet. We've got the background colors that I added so that we had visibility. And we have the boilerplate, which sort of sets everything back to the same demonstration, and that's why you don't have any padding or anything like that in these paragraphs, because we cleared all that out. Now I want to change this because I want to leave this in place for access. So I'm going to change the style sheet that is attached that I'm going to be working with, and that's just a simple thing to do. I've already created the style sheet, and it's the exact same thing that was just connected to it, but I'm going to be editing it, and so I want to use a different one. You don't have to do that kind of thing. I'm doing it for demonstration purposes, and I named it Fluid Responsive Grid Constitution. And down here I've got a link for the CSS document, so I'm going to change that to point to the new one, and I'm putting those down there just so that you can have easy access to these style sheets that I am using. Fluid Responsive Grid Constitution. Okay, so that's just sort of prep work so that you don't wonder why things are suddenly a little bit different than they were. Okay, so I come in here, and what do I want to do? Have a fixed width document. I want to change it into a fluid grid. So the way that we do that is that we need to change those pixels that we have. For instance, 960 pixels. We need to change those into percentages. That's the first thing that we need to do in this. So I'm once again going to turn to the document that we created. And for the idea of wrapper, I don't have the math on here right now, but it's 960 divided by 960, which is 1.0%. So for this width, I'm going to change that. And I could either do 100% here, or if I preferred to, whatever software you're using is going to have a widget that allows you to modify the styles or edit the styles. And so what you're going to see is I changed it there, but it also changed in here. So it's changed to 100%. You can do the same thing in Dreamweaver and probably any other of the WYSIWYG editors that you might be using. So I've got that set to 100%, and that doesn't really have any change there because we're not really looking at it in a browser. So let's just go ahead and shift and look and see what this does when we move it up to a browser. Okay, so let's take a look at what that simple thing has done. This is what the page looked like before I made the adjustments. And you'll notice that this blue background that represents the wrapper ends there no matter what size the page is made. That's because it was set to 960 pixels. In this one, it's set to 100%. So what it does is it expands the size of just the wrapper, because that's the only thing that we've touched so far. It expands that wrapper so that it will take up whatever size is available. Now, as tempted as I am to start changing things, like I really don't like that this bumps right up to the top, and I don't like the nav, I don't like the look. I'm not going to change those things right now because we really just want to work on turning this into a fluid grid. So I go back into my CSS. We've taken care of the wrapper, and that gives us the full width of the viewport, whatever size we're in. So now we're going to need to work on the header. So let's go, and we see the header, and the width that we have comes from the math that we did. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to change that. Let's take a look at that. bring it back up in our browser. And you'll notice that now that next element has expanded to 100 or to the 97% of whatever size window we are in, down to the point where it will collapse to the point it will collapse all the way, even though the page below it isn't collapsing, because it is responding to the 100% of the available width. And that really is the principle that we're going to be working on. We're going to be manipulating that function to resize and refloat these different elements so that they work together as a responsive grid. So let me go ahead and hide that. And I'm going to walk through several of these settings before we go back and look at the picture. So I've got my nav, and my width is there, 82 something percent. That was my nav. Then my main body. And I'm just copying these codes that I put in my template and put them right in here. Let's go ahead and save that and take a look at it at this point. When we reload, you'll see that now the main body has expanded, and these things are still floating left with the pixels that are there. They're not expanding out to the available width. And when it collapses, see, that one disappeared. It actually dropped down, and that's because of the float. So we're actually going to be taking advantage of that float. When there isn't room over here for it anymore, it's going to drop down. So the main body is resizing, and those things that sit within it, they're not resizing themselves, but they're reflowing in order to fit inside of that main body. Let's go ahead and do all the rest of these, and then we'll go and look at it. So our width for all three of these are going to be the same. Oops, I just need the number. So the left, the center, and the right, since they're all 300 pixels off of the mathematical equation, will all have the same width. So we'll just post that in all of those. And then we'll get our footer in there. And now when we reload, all of those adjust out to where they're supposed to be. So now I'm looking around, and what I see, I've got something weird going over here. This is floating up above where it should be floating, so we're going to need to take a look at that. Okay, and that drops down. So we need to figure out why that's doing that. We'll have to fix that before we go on. But you do notice that everything is resizing. When it gets down to where it can't fit in there with the different math, then it drops down below. So that floating is still going on. But we have this encroachment every once in a while up here of our left, center, and right going up into this part of the main body. So looking back at that, why it's bouncing up in there, I've came and looked at the code here, and the reason that that's going up is that within this main body div, I've got this information up here, which is where I put the preamble, but I didn't give it any block level elements. It's just sitting there inside the main body, but it doesn't have a block level element. So what those other things are trying to do is float around it. So the left, the center, and the right divs all are sitting in the same box as this. So naturally they're going to want to float up around each other. So we need to figure out what do we want to do. And I think what I want to do is I want to give that some structure here. I want to give that a div. And I'm going to give that the name of upper main, just because that is semantic. It tells me exactly what it is, and I have to, of course, come and close my div. I didn't close it there either. Okay, so now let's go and look at what that has done to our design. Let's go to a split view, and it looks like that's probably taking care of it, but I want to make sure. I want to test it by looking at it in a browser. So I'm going to publish all my changed files, and I'm going to go back to my browser. And now that took care of that. So a big part of this is troubleshooting when you see problems. And when I look at this page, I see two problems. First off is I've got this little gap over here, and the other thing is that when I get to a certain point, that drops down. Now mathematically, if we're using all percentages, that shouldn't happen until you just get to so small that it's ridiculous. But it shouldn't be happening yet. So we'll go back in here and we want to take a look around. And what we see is that we still got our margins using percentages. So what we need to do, and we didn't do that math on our assignment, but that is math that needs to be in there because we have to calculate the percentages for these gutters too. And so when I'm looking at, and I'm going to bring up my calculator here just to do the math so that you can see it in front of you. What we need to do is we need to figure out what the math is going to be for each of these gutters. And so we go to our context. And so what we're working at is we're not working inside this box or this box. We're working inside the main body. So we've got the 940. And so we want 10 pixels divided by 940. And so 10 divided by 940 equals, and this is the percentage that we're going to use. Actually, this is not the percentage. This is the math that's needs to be converted to a percentage. So we'll press percentage, and then we've got what we need. And we're not going to do the full thing. That goes out forever. So I'm just going to copy that. And we're going to come back in here. And anywhere where we have 10 pixels, we're going to paste that percentage in there. And I figured that. Now, the only reason that we would have a problem with that breaking down is because there is a problem with the math somewhere. So what I need to do is I need to go in through and troubleshoot. And there's a couple things that occur to me. It could be as a result of the calculator rounding up, or it could be that there's somewhere bad math in there. So I missed one of the margins and I left it at 10 pixels. And so that would never shrink down. So you would get to a point where it was small enough that those 10 pixels would throw the math off so that the page couldn't fit within the mathematical equation that was set up for it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I am pretty sure, and this is what I find. I wasn't watching closely when I did this. So what I've got is, as you recall, we have 10 pixels divided by 940. Now I'm just going to grab this number because what happened, let me go ahead and copy that. When I hit this percentage sign, see how I have 0.0106? When I hit that percentage sign, it went to 1.13 instead of 1.06, which is what I would have expected. So I don't know what's going on there with the calculator, but I know how to make it right. So I knew it had to be a problem with the math, but I just wasn't understanding what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this the old-fashioned way. I'm going to move my decimal 2 points, and there we've got 1.06, etc., etc., etc. percent. And I will put that anywhere where I have a in the left, center, and right. Anything with inside that main body that has the same context. And while that is a very small number, when you are doing layouts mathematically, they've got to be right, because otherwise it's not going to work. So I'm going to save that, again, publish it. And let's go ahead and reload that. And there it is. And it'll collapse down. See, so it's really important to get this math right. Now you'll notice that I still have this little space in here. And let's go ahead and take care of that one right now. That is the right one that is doing that, and I've got that set to float left. I'm going to change that to float right. And then any of those fractions of pixels that are left will be taken over by the center rather than the edge. And we will take and we will reload it. See how it shifted over. And at all widths now, this should function the way that it is supposed to. And that gives you your first, that makes it a fluid grid. In the next video, we'll go into a responsive grid where we will apply the different layouts that we used in our prototype. So right there you have the 12. In the next video we will go to doing the 8 and the 4.